Gentlemen, please remove their hats, and everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you for being here this evening. Before we get going, I just want to go ahead and introduce tonight's participants. Starting at my far right is Mr. Chris Shipley, our Director of Finance and Operations, Ms. Lynn Town, Clerk of the Board, Dr. Stan Olson, our Superintendent. To my immediate left is Mr. Tom Hearn, Vice Chair of the School Board, Ms. Lisa May, Board Member, Ms. Tambra Pickford, Board Member, and Mr. Dave Eubanks, Board Member. My name is Casey Morserow, and I'm the Board Chair. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of this meeting. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to the public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted in writing to the board through the clerk, Ms. Lynn Town. Okay, board members, we need to just amend tonight's agenda. Under board recognition, we're going to add a presentation from CEP. So is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, we need to, well, is there a motion to approve the minutes for November 6th, November 7th, November 14th, November 15th, November 20th, and November 29th?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I know, it's a lot of meetings there.
You've read that many times.
Okay, so board recognition, Ms. Voller, are you ready to come up? And welcome. Thanks for being here tonight.
Good evening, Chairman Morserow, trustees, and Superintendent Olson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. This past October, the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership held its 4th annual Disco Inferno. While everyone attended, enjoyed reliving the 80s and dancing to Michael Jackson and Madonna, more importantly, we appreciated the opportunity to support Coeur d'Alene School District libraries. On behalf of CEP, we are thrilled to present a check this evening to the Coeur d'Alene School District in the amount of $24,000, so that each of the 17 libraries will receive a little over $1,400 to purchase materials and resources for augmenting their collections. CEP is even more proud to acknowledge that due to our efforts and vision and our very generous community, we have donated nearly $90,000 to our school libraries over the past 4 years. Fundraising to benefit Coeur d'Alene Public School libraries fits closely with CEP's mission. The event not only recognizes the important role that libraries play in student literacy and academic achievement, but it is a fundraiser that benefits every student in the district. CEP is already looking ahead to next year's disco event with great anticipation that, with the help of every district librarian, it will be the most successful disco event yet. Thank you for the opportunity to present this check this evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We appreciate the efforts of CEP, and I know this event has been a big success, and our librarians are very appreciative. So thanks for coming tonight. Trustee Eubanks, are
Yes.
you doing Invest, Inspire, Innovate, and Shining
I am.
Stars tonight?
Fancy that. Okay. And there are some pictures, yeah. Hey, each school month in the Coeur d'Alene School District, our district in partnership with CEP and also the Panhandle Kiwanis honors special people in the district, and 3 teachers are honored. I'll start with the teachers, and they get an Invest, Inspire, and Innovate award. This is for being outstanding teachers. And we give an award to an elementary teacher, a middle school teacher, and a high school teacher. And let's go ahead and start the roll call up here. First of all, we have, this is from Venture High School. This is our high school teacher for the month of November 2017. This is, because they're not in the same order I have here, this is Susan, it says it right there. This is Susan Thomas. I want you to know that we made this presentation in front of the entire student body at Venture, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. But in any case, Susan Harris was our November high school teacher of the month. And next we have Thomas Barnett at Lakes. Thomas is the young man in the middle there, and he's our November 2017 middle school teacher of the month. That's Jeff Bengston on the right there. There's another trustee up there somewhere. See if you can find her. Oh, found her, never mind. Okay, in any case, Thomas is our middle school teacher of the month. And next we have, and those two were brought to us by Coeur d'Alene District and also the Panhandle Kiwanis. And here we have the elementary school teacher of the month. And this award is presented on behalf of Coeur d'Alene School District and also the CEP. And there's Linda right in the middle. I know Linda Harris, and I know that this award was very well deserved. A totally awesome teacher. She teaches the advanced learning classes there at Hayden Meadows. Awesome teacher. That's Steve, somebody on the right. Oh, never mind. Let's go ahead. Sorry, Steve. All right. And then we have at the end here, we also give out a comparable award to a classified employee each month. Our November Shining Star Award comes to us from the Fernand STEM Academy, a Title I assistant, Cheryl Radcliffe, and we really appreciate our classified staff as a whole, and Cheryl at this point in time in particular. Can we have a nice round of applause for all of these wonderful people? Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Eubanks. I think we had a typo on one of those slides. Linda Harris is at Atlas, I believe. And it's at Hayden Meadows up there, so she is at Atlas.
She is at
yes.
Atlas, yeah. All right.
Regardless, she's a fine teacher.
Yeah. Wherever she is.
Okay, high school student body reports. I'm going to start with Venture tonight, please. Thank you for being here.
Hello, board members. I'm Alex Hanna. I'm also with me tonight is Val. We represent the career technical classes of Venture High School. Venture school year is flying by with learning and activities. Highlights for the last month, including the following: K-Tech Venture students, along with the district shop, have been producing playbills for the Lake City Playhouse and Out of the Shadows Theater. The playbills this year for LCPH have included Sister Act, Wait Until Dark, and Every Christmas Story Ever Told. The story of Out of the Shadows playbill has been for the recent Fiddler on the Roof, Jr. Major process was made in execution of our Excel grant. On November 10th, Steve Ecken of Western Tree helped plant a beautiful old world maple tree in our courtyard. The rest of the project will be finished in the spring. The Pumpkin Roll fundraiser went well. On November 10th, 4 students worked tirelessly from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. to bake 45 rolls. Our sales benefit the Community Action Food Bank, Venture High School Food Bank, and the Culinary Arts class projects and or donations for improvements of our school. The popcorn sales for the fundraiser brought an additional $200 for leadership projects. Our leadership class has partnered with the Panhandle Health District to work on creating a friendlier atmosphere at the health district for teens. The youth-friendly clinic assessment is an ongoing project that should be completed by the spring. Currently, the students working with Kelsey McCall to create a survey of students' need. 7 seniors recently completed their senior project speeches were shared with the staff members and members of the students' family on November 10th. Thursday, December 14th will be our annual holiday dinner. For over 37 years, the school has celebrated either Thanksgiving or holidays by sitting down to share a meal as a family. We feel this tradition is our most important. Thank you for your support of our school. We do appreciate all you do to help us be well-educated, responsible community members.
Thank you very much. Coeur d'Alene High School. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Rachel Dooley, the Coeur d'Alene High School ASB president. This month at CHS, Student Council has been busy planning Fight for the Fish, our annual spirit competition and basketball game with Lake City High School. We've also been planning our Holiday Spirit Week, which will be the last week before winter break. The CHS leadership class just completed their annual food drive. We were able to surpass our initial goal and collect over $1,500, more than 2,000 books, and over 2,000 pounds of food. This month, we had 2 teams attend our state competitions. The CHS football team competed at state and were able to take second place. A large group of students and staff watched the game together at Hayden Cinemas. Our drama team also attended the Idaho State Drama Competition. 65 CHS students qualified for districts, and out of those, 37 CHS students qualified for state. We are proud to announce that under the instruction and guidance of Mr. Jared Helm, we have won 6 out of the last 7 state competitions. Blake Dodson and Hannah Verity are the first 4-time state champions in CHS history. In general, CHS students are looking forward to winter break and the start of a new semester. Thank you.
Okay, Lake City High School.
Good evening, esteemed board chair, honorable trustees, Superintendent Olson, and district administration. My name is Taylor Pickford, and I am the ASB secretary at Lake City High School. With me tonight is our ASB president, Valerie Lago-Sosa. Our vice president, Kira Simpson, and treasurer, Peyton Barber, couldn't be here tonight as they are currently in Moscow for their basketball game. Our focus during this holiday season has been on community service, and we've been busy at Lake City. Our Jingle Books drive is going strong and will be wrapping up on Friday. In addition, ASB ran our annual holiday food drive before Thanksgiving in partnership with KHQ and Second Harvest Food Bank. With the help and support of our amazing T-Will family, we beat last year's numbers by collecting 2,600 pounds of food and $999 this year. And our ASB, along with our cheerleaders, drummers, and mascot, were featured on KHQ News last Friday. Christmas for Ours is also underway, which is our school-wide effort to help our T-Will families in need this holiday season. So far, we have 22 families that we're helping to take care of. We've also partnered with Union Gospel Mission to provide gifts for women and children sheltered there. Our student council has 2 community service projects qualify as finalists for the SDCU $100 project, and voting for winning has started today and goes through Friday. In activities news, we're very proud to report that we had our drama department send 11 groups to the state competition, with 6 of them receiving medals. Winter sports are going strong, and Student Council is finalizing preparations for Fight for the Fish next month. We would like to thank Seth Dennison for coming to speak with our Student Council about the cell phone policy. It was great to be included, and we're grateful that our opinions were considered. We also had our academic lettering ceremony last month, during which we had 51 first-year PIN recipients, 29 first-year letter and PIN recipients, and 54 second-year academic recipients. National Honor Society also inducted 12 first-year members and 12 second-year members. We wanted to extend our deepest gratitude to Mike Nelson for being our keynote speaker. His speech was inspirational, and everyone commented about how moved they were. Thank you so much for your constant support for our school and district. And thank you for the opportunity to come speak with you this evening, and we'll see you again next month.
Okay, thank you for being here. Is anyone from K-Tech here tonight? Okay, Mr. Twitchell, that means you're up, sir, with our Coeur d'Alene Education Association report.
Alrighty. Board members, Superintendent Olson, district employees, guests, thank you for allowing me for this time to speak. I think it's important to start by being honest and admitting when someone has a problem. And you know, I've tried sharing it with my wife, but unfortunately, this addiction I have, she's an enabler, and I'm a workaholic, and she will not allow me to quit. So if anybody could help me out with that, I'd appreciate it. Alrighty. Anyways, that fell a little flat, I guess so. Alrighty. So to start with, one thing that I have been hearing from quite a few members and just employees around the district who've been coming up to me and they're like, is that accurate? And so I went to the district website, and it is. And so there is talk amongst the troops, I guess, if you will, in regard to what the posted pay will be for the new superintendent. And with that, advertises between $155,000 and $180,000. That is quite, in my opinion, quite the jump from what it has been. The last contract that Superintendent Handelman had was just under $130,000. And so even if the new superintendent were hired at the 155, that is almost a 20% raise. If it's 180,000, that is just under a 40% raise from what it was. And in times when at the negotiation table we hear over and over, there's no money, how we're putting the district at a financial cliff at even a 2% raise for all the employees, it just was a little shocking to see that there's a potential 40% raise for someone that it hasn't even been here yet. And so I don't think I have any questions with that, but just wanted to vocalize that concern, and like I say, that it is drawing some attention amongst that. Also, of course, one of the big hot topics amongst the schools is the cell phone policy, which I know I'm looking forward to the debate tonight about it. Should be exciting. Probably will make for a long meeting, but that's okay. When we first heard about it, we as the CEA decided to jump on a little bit because we weren't for sure how exactly the board would be going about gathering information. So we did our own little kind of mini survey with the CEA members. As a whole, the majority of the teachers, it was about 60-40, did want to see some sort of a change. With that said, though, that was primarily with elementary and middle school teachers. Once it got up to high school, the majority of the high school teachers were primarily said in the comments, just leave the policy as is. The issue is enforcing the current policy. That it's just not being done, enforcing the current policy as is. Some of the comments, which I'm guessing probably got passed on in the survey that went to you, though, enforcement, enforcement of a zero tolerance policy is a nightmare and pits teachers against the students and parents. This is definitely a polarizing issue, to be sure. Educators and admin need to enforce the current policy. Cell phones are a part of life now. And as an educator, I believe it is my responsibility to teach proper use. If I could venture off a little bit on my own personal opinion on this, I too believe that the current policy is just fine if it's enforced. But I think a lot of the issue is that it's not being enforced. And so part of my question then to you and the building administrators is what's happening when it's not being enforced. I don't necessarily foresee changing the whole thing and having a potential ban as the right answer. I did a small informal survey of a Lake City teacher, a teacher, not teachers, but teacher, and asked if, since the stricter policy went into place there, if they've seen more bathroom breaks. And the answer was yes. I would ask that at the very least, allowing at lunchtime. I can tell you myself, if I'm not checking my phone every once in a while, it's withdrawals basically. And I imagine probably most of you up there would be the same thing. I would challenge all of you to go 6.5, 7 hours without looking at your phone. I don't know. I don't know if anybody in here could really do it. Well, one. Along the lines too is we are in the New Century now. I remember back when I was in school, math teachers saying, oh, well, it's not like you're always going to have a calculator with you. Well, haha, yeah, I do always have one with me. But, you know, depending upon the way things go, I may not be able to use it. We're in a, you know, we literally have the world in our palms to get information. Real world practice is if you need to find information, you pull out your phone and you look it up. If there's something I don't know how to do, I jump to my phone, go find the YouTube video, whatever it is to get the answers. So I would ask that that be taken into consideration, and that concludes me for tonight, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Twitchell.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, we've come to our time for public comment here. Before we begin, just want to remind the public, while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow some limited public comment on district-related items. Those wishing to address the board during the public comment period are limited to one comment not to exceed 3 minutes. If you have additional comments that you would like to present to the board, you may do so in writing through the clerk of the board, Ms. Lynn Town. Please keep in mind that board members will not respond to public comment. If I've determined that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate your privilege to address the board. And with that said, Mr. Colas, you are first up.
It's been a nice long time since I've been here. Thank you, trustees, Superintendent Olson, members of the audience. I will try to stay within 3 minutes. Lake City, I'm a teacher at Lake City, and I've had the opportunity to be a part of the experiment that we've run as a result of our social media issues at the school, leading to a crackdown on cell phone use. I have honestly enjoyed it. Students have responded very well to restrictions in the classroom, but there are a couple of truths that we should get clear. Cell phones do distract students in the classroom. There is no question about that. If students have unfettered access to their phones, they are always divided between the thing that is coming, not from me as an instructor, but from the device, and whatever pearl of wisdom I think I'm casting in front of them. The second thing is that cell phones provide them with incredible access to information. That's not going away. The district has achieved almost a 1-to-1 student to electronic device ratio. That provides an incredible opportunity for us to do all kinds of wonderful things in the classroom. But parents and students will not give up their access to communication. I looked over the revision of the board policy. I think that it's very solid. A board policy that provides a firm backstop to support educators and building administrators in limiting classroom distractions, especially with device-dependent students and parents, is necessary. But a policy allowing education professionals to take advantage of teachable moments using technology is also a smart policy. And I think what schools need, what administrators need, what teachers need is the support of the board when we say no. Saying no is tough. I'm getting pretty good at it, and my students are responding. So good luck with your discussion on the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colas. That's the shortest you've ever been, I think. So, job well done.
I'd like to heard more.
Next up, Denise Miller. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Denise Miller. I teach kindergarten at Ramsey, and I'm also a parent of a 6th grader at Woodland, and I wanted to bring forward 3 issues. So the first one I wanted to bring forward was the need for full-day kindergarten. I had a parent last year in my classroom who happened to work in the medical field, and she's like, oh my gosh, she goes, I cannot believe how hard you work. She goes, it's kind of like being in the emergency ward and you're triaging all the skills that you need to teach. And I thought, that is a really good analogy. I'm going to use it. So what I would like for you guys to consider as you move forward in your planning is, I know that some schools only have half day and some schools have full day, and the schools that only have half day, maybe you could consider having one of the teachers become a full day kindergarten teacher, because I think there is a real need for it in the community. And I just can't get to the depth that I need to get the kids where I need to get them at the end of the year. If you look at the test scores, yeah, my test scores are, competitive, but they could be better. And I think I could send kids stronger to 1st grade if I had more time with them. So I'm here to advocate before you put together another levy or another bond. Please consider more full-day kindergarten. And I'm also speaking on behalf of Mary Hoskins. So we had a professional conversation this morning about the need for it. The second thing I wanted to address was bullying. I do think that it's being reported more often, and I think it is being taken more seriously. The concern that I have as a parent is, how do we help the kids who are bullied and the kids who are bullying bring about some healing and bring about some peace? What are some strategies that we can use with junior high kids on conflict resolution? Where does the anger come from? Is really putting these kids in detention the best policy, especially when you're putting kids who have been bullied with the kids who bullied in the same classroom? Is that really the best answer? I think there's so much research out there and so many other options that we could look at that would move our kids forward to more positive relationships as they go through school. So that's one thing I would like to bring up, or I guess the second thing I'd like to bring up. The third issue I'd like to bring up too is a transition issue. When kids are going from an elementary school to a middle school, they're going from 2 teachers to multiple teachers, possibly 6 teachers. So there is a transition period where they're learning to adapt to multiple teachers, multiple expectations. They're learning how to write down assignments in their agenda. They're learning how to keep track of them. They're learning what happens if you don't do an assignment, if an assignment's late. The teachers are also trying to figure out the kids. One of the solutions is study hall. I believe that study hall needs to be re-looked at, revamped. I think that we need to look at how can we help kids get organized? How can we help kids turn assignments in on time without giving them lunch detention? Because we're going from an elementary school where they get 3 recesses to now junior high where they get 1 lunch recess, basically. So a lot of kids need their lunchtime to reset and be able to go for the rest of the afternoon and focus. So if we put them again, like, here, you need to do more work, it's overwhelming to them. And I don't think we're getting to the root of what their issue is. Is it, a home issue? Is it an organizing issue? I'm not sure that we're getting to that issue. And there are so many great tools out there for teachers and for administrators to consider. So I would like to see that re-looked at. So those are the 3 things that I wanted to bring forward, and I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Dr. Olson, you have a superintendent's report for us this evening?
Short report this evening. 2 quick items. Number 1, a thanks to the Board of Trustees and to a number of the members of this audience and our citizenry and colleagues for last week's Data Summit 2.0. Combined with the first data summit in September, we've spent approximately 12 hours taking a look at the performance of Coeur d'Alene School District students against all of the major data sets and all the major indicators that the state, the nation, and our own local district have before us. The conclusions are still in front of us. We have a third meeting, and I'd like to have folks jot this down if they could. I believe the board has weighed in on this particular date of February 21st, 2018, from 9 until 2 right here, where we will bring forward the conclusions of the work we did in those 2 sessions of Data Summit. We'll also agendize findings, and what we mean by that is really a 3-level agenda. Number 1 is from the conclusions and recommendations that bubble up from our work, what things can we do for the balance of this school year to address issues, questions, concerns? A second level will be over the next 2 years, the balance of this year and next year, so that the incoming superintendent will have, to some degree, some prescription and some familiarity with the issues, concerns, questions that have been identified by the stakeholder groups of this district, starting with the Board of Trustees, but including all of us, the citizenry, our staff, and so on and so forth. The third level would be what we call systemic issues, issues that arise from us taking a look at what has been said, questions raised, concerns raised, that in some cases have been elephants in the room, that we all know exist, yet have not been spoken to relative to an action agenda. Rather than go into specifics on that, I think that will be pretty evident from our review of the input collected and reported. This will be not only a session where we'll do those public reports, but from that session, we'll disperse those reports internally and externally so that they can be shared by the community. Again, we want to thank everyone for the time, the effort, the diligence put forward in those data summits. They were remarkable events, and there's a reason why most school districts don't do these, because they're a heck of a lot of work. But the reality is the value and the gain from these experiences can be substantial, and my view is that they're going to be substantial for our system. A second item has some equal importance, and I'd like our board, CEA, staff, and community colleagues to write this down, and that is the date of January 19th from 9 to 2, and that is a budget workshop. As you know full well, we've had lots of changes in the district relative to the superintendency, relative to the directorship of our finance and operations area, and our whole budget process. What we would like to do is bring people together to do a retrospective as well as a current view and a future forward view of our budget situation. The retrospective is, what does our budget look like over the last 5 years in this district? What do our revenues look like, our expenditures? Where have we had issues? Where have we had problems? Where have we had challenges? And then take a look at, again, where we get our money. What are the sources of our dollars in the district from local, state, federal, and special sources? And then secondly, how do we spend our money? Where are those dollars directed? How are they spent? And then third, what is the trajectory for spending for the balance of this year? Are we on target? This is a meeting that I would ask the board to consider and the district to consider be continued every year as part of an overall budget calendar, that we have touch points throughout the year where we can not only look at our previous budget and the results of the previous year in an audit, but also where we are in the current year and in the preparation for the year to come. We'll introduce a budget calendar that we hope to memorialize in practice for the district and give people an opportunity, first and foremost, to understand the school district budget. I'm very, very old, as many of you know, and I grew up in systems where in the old days, school business officials used to relish the thought of making school budgets difficult and only the domain of financial professionals, as opposed to the folks who serve in the field, and that would include Chris Shipley, who believes that everyone should understand the budget, that the budget should be transparent, and we should be aware of how it works, how it is, where it's going, and how we impact it as time goes on. So we're going to weigh in on that process. This is certainly coming as a result of our discussions with both board, I shouldn't say both, with board, staff, and community to do a deep dive and get a more substantial look at where we've been, where we are, and where we're going budget-wise, what the successes of the budget process have been here, and there have been many, and what the challenges are, and there are a few. So if you're able to join us on that date, that is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees, excuse me, a special meeting of the Board of Trustees, but it's open to not only board members, but staff and community. That'll do it for now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Olson. Just to piggyback on that, if you're looking at other district stuff or you come across something in a book or something like that and you like the format of it, please share that with Dr. Olson and Chris so they have an idea, since this is kind of a new process that we're going to be starting with. Trustee Eubanks, under board comments, I have Jingle Books here, and I assume that's you.
Yes, I would like to say first of all to Dr. Olson that you're not old in my book, and that every board meeting is special, okay? Hey, I'm going to talk about Jingle Books here for a few minutes. About 4 years ago, a friend of mine and I created Jingle Books as a means of getting reading books in the hands and homes of every single kindergarten, first, second, and third grader in the Coeur d'Alene School District. Since we started this 4 years ago, at least as of last year's tally, we collected and distributed some 85,000 books. We're in our fourth year right now, and we just went over the 100,000 mark for our 4 years. In fact, we now have counted, sorted, boxed up, and ready to go for next week's free book fairs. We have already 20,000 books set to go. We need another 5,000 books or so to ensure that every K1, 2, 3 kid in our district gets their pick of 6 reading books to take home and keep. Okay, so we're just about there. If you have any extra books sitting around, if you know where you can pick up some and turn them in, you can turn them into any one of our schools except Coeur d'Alene High School. Coeur d'Alene High School has already run their Jingle Books program this year, and they turned in an amazing 2,302 children's books last week, and that's really cool. So in any case, I want to just throw in a couple of other things here. One of the bases for doing this is also that kids learn to read in K3. Starting in 4th grade, the expectation is that they will read to learn. And if you haven't mastered reading through 3rd grade proficiency, going into 4th grade, you're going to start to struggle. We don't want them to struggle. Our board has set a goal. We did this last year. We set a board goal of 100% reading proficiency for all for all exiting 3rd graders as soon as possible and by whatever means. So we're working on it. Lots of other people are working on it. And I wanted to share with you, if you want to see something really, really cool, come to one of our elementary free book fairs next week. On Tuesday in the morning, Ramsey, Skyway, and Sorensen will be having their free book fairs. Wednesday, it'll be Atlas, Bryan, Hayden Meadows, and Dalton. You can call the school to find out what time. Thursday, it'll be Wenton, Nexa, and Bora, and Friday will be Fernand. At these free book fairs, we will take all the books that we've collected and we'll set them up in their cafeteria usually. We'll have a great big long table mounded over with K1 books, another one mounted over with second grade reading level books, and then third grade and up. And what we do is we invite classes to come in 2 at a time, sometimes 3 at a time. And the kids have a little shopping bag, and they can go through and pick out, hopefully, as many as 6 reading books from whatever pile they can read, and they can pack them up and take them home and keep them. So it's really beautiful. I have to tell you, a couple of years ago, I had a little boy come to me and pull on my pant leg and said, "Hey, mister, when do I have to bring them back?" And I kept saying, "You don't have to." And again, no, you don't understand, like I'm some old guy who can't think. No, when do I have to bring them back? And I said, "You don't have to bring them back ever." And he said, "Really? This is the best day ever." So that's what Jingle Books is all about. And if you have any donations, again, all of our schools but Coeur d'Alene High School are still collecting them. I have one other item, if I could talk about real fast. It's really cool, and it's about community service. We have some folks in our community who have just started up a program that they're called Hope on the Home Front, and they've started up something called Coats for Big Kids. Coats for Kids is all over the Inland Northwest. We all know about it. And they almost always get coats for little kids. Big kids, high school kids particularly, are kind of left out in this. So we have a program that's now started up here in Coeur d'Alene. It's just for Coeur d'Alene students, just for Coeur d'Alene kids. You can donate at Northern Lakes Fire Protection District in Hayden, Ziggy's on Wyoming, the Metro Express Car Wash, and the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce. Any adult, small size through XXX coats that you may have around the house. And turn them in, and this group will make sure they end up in the hands of young people, high school kids for the most part, who need them, okay? Isn't that a good idea? It's really cool. So got some real cold weather coming. In fact, it's already here. I hope you'll help us with that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Eubanks. Okay, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, I did want to say something, and maybe I'm stealing Chris's thunder on this a little bit. But on page 63 of the consent agenda, there was the bus award bid, and I just wanted to point out that even though we authorized 3-point harness seatbelts in all the school buses this year, we came in $40,000 under budget onto that. We had budgeted $600,000, and we came in at $560,000. So I just wanted to think that's important to publicly state that we were able to put seatbelts in some of our buses and came in under budget. I think that's important.
Thank you, Trustee Hearn. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Shipley, you're going to be up here with a couple items in our info section. And first up is item A, our capital construction update.
Capital construction update. New this year, you've asked for bid timelines in the past. And then so I put together this spreadsheet here, and it just graphically kind of shows with the bid timelines and the dates. I tried to match the color to the schools as best as I could. I think the yellow is actually a Wolverine. So I think the Wolverine dresses in yellow. I'm not a comic book guy, so that's the best I could do. So anyway, that's for your information, and that's just kind of what's drafted out. Those dates may and very well could change, but I think the board and whoever wants to read this has the general idea when those dates are and when they land on the calendar. And far as purchases and outlays go, there hasn't been any change from last month. But when we do start breaking ground and that comes fast and heavy, then these presentations will be expanded, of course. So that's that fella. And then coming up next then is finance reports. And then so our financial reports here, so what's our first one here? I believe it's a monthly budget status. There it goes. Thank you. Again, there's nothing, as Dr. Olson says, in January, we're going to go much in depth on these types of reports here and the whole budget and the whole budget process, and also the financial landscape, the map, and of course, what's the most important thing about a map? Where you are on the map. And then so we'll dive into those a little bit more. But being consistent every month, where this report shows us in October, that's about 4 months in. So we're tracking through, but that's one of the things about just having information just here on one page, is that sometimes you can scope in and not see the vector of your financials, where you are with revenues, expenditures, and how your financial statements are actually reflecting the activities of the district. So really what I want to say here is nothing extreme has jumped out. We're still on plan. But one thing about this district is that our plan is pretty tight, so we're not dealing with it. As you know, we have a large budget, but we don't have a large amount of fund balance excess, if you will. So we're not planning on having excess revenues. So that's where we're going to get into more detail. Okay. Next on here is on our board report. Our next one here. So this right here, again, is that same information. And really, when you look at this, it's another one of these, and I've kind of carried these as they've had gone from the prior year, and it's what the board has seen. And again, I look at these and I wonder like how much information are we really gleaning from this here. I can tell you look in some categories and it's fairly obvious that like, okay, summer program, we have used that up. Going through here and towards the bottom line here, you see we're at 22%. So it says like, okay, we're online, we're going forward. We're not having one, extravagant, issue come up. If we were, it would show up more likely than not because, as you know, in their district, what we spend most of our money on is payroll. And so we keep really pretty close tabs on our payroll expenditures. And I think when we get into our January meeting, one of the things that will come out of that meeting is what does the board really want to see at these meetings? We have a short amount of time here, and as you see on our meeting in January, I think we have scheduled 5 hours, in which we're going to be able to get deep. And I promise you, anybody here that wants to come to that meeting, please do. You're shaking your head. I can see you. I promise you, it won't be just textbook. It won't be dry. We're actually going to get into the mechanics and what the school district does and how financials reflect the activity of the district. And I think that's pretty exciting. So if you want to see me be excited, January. All right. Next item, I think I already talked about this. Oh, no, I didn't. This is the enrollment report.
Oh, Chris, can I ask you a quick question before?
Absolutely.
As I'm new to looking at these, is there any way that we could like mark funds that are levy funds? So as we're growing accustomed to seeing gifted and talented, I know that's one line item that we pay for with our levy funds. Could we mark those somehow?
So here's what. Let me put it to you this way. So as money comes in, it doesn't necessarily come in and get labeled by nature, especially with the general fund. It just starts pooling in, if you will. And what gets segregated out is how we expend it. Example, that levy, $1 million, 600 of that, we said, we're going to take this, spend it on school buses,
right,
which we have tonight.
That was the additional $1 million, though.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So monies that come in, for example, we have state funds that come in and levy funds that go into the general fund. Now, as those get spent, they don't get spent by nature.
Right.
They do when you get into additional funds. Example, food service. Another example, Title I. Mm-hmm. Those do. Why? Reason. because the funding source is specific to one item, example, federal government.
Right.
So the federal government also, when you spend their money, what do they want back? Information how you're doing, and that's where the single audit comes in. So we report not only just for the single audit, we're constantly reporting back to the state and other stakeholders.
Maybe that's something we could put on the workshop about understanding how we use our levy dollars, especially if the community's here, because it is difficult. You know, we run levies and we advertise what we're spending the money on, but it's not reflected monthly. So I think it would be helpful for me at least.
Sure, we can do something with that. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Did you write that down? Okay. I got it too. I'm just kidding. Okay. Okay, thank you, Lynn. Coeur d'Alene School District Enrollment Report, November. Again, kids are showing up to school, and as you know, we get paid by the state by average daily attendance, and I believe it's on our website. When I first pulled it up, I checked it again this evening. Attendance matters. It does count. There are models out there from the state to go to different, just an enrollment-based. If that were to occur, if they were to change that formula and not include any additional monies, then you're just going to have winners and you would have losers. And then so that hasn't panned out yet. We're not sure how it's going to end out and roll out. If they rolled it out as planned, I believe that the Coeur d'Alene School District, the tail ends on those become heavy. The winners have big wins, the losers have big loses. There's not a lot of middle ground in that. We would be preliminary, we ran that at 6.5 million less. And I believe that they used the 2016 numbers. So anyway, if you run into a congressman at the state, ask him for more money. Honestly, that's the only thing that's really going to change on this formula that would really help out the districts if they would properly fund education. I know it's obvious, just wanted to say it out loud.
And maybe you could clarify for people in the
Sure.
audience that aren't, we were able to attend some of those seminars during the convention, but I think what you're referring to is the new formula for funding, correct? So they've given us a calculator that we can plug in our current enrollment. So you're saying that potentially we could lose in that formula by approximately 6 point.
If they were to say, hey, this is your formula, this is what you're going to get, and you don't throw a fit, then yes, we would. Chances of them doing that, non-zero, but really close to zero, they'd probably do something as a freeze. I just don't see that politically being viable, of them saying, hey, next year you're going to get 6.5 million less, or whatever that would turn out to be.
But since we know that this change is coming within the next 12 to 18, maybe 24 months, they've been very clear that they've been working at this for quite some time.
Correct.
There are measures that we can probably take to get ourselves prepared in case we are a loser. True, maybe at our workshop we could.
Absolutely, and that's another reason it's important to have a healthy fund balance and just a healthy budget where you're not, if your budget changes, you're still in the good. Like, hey, the fund balance grew, not as much as we thought, but it still got larger. It's much better position to be like, we're above, we're below, we're above, we're below. It's like water skiing at 10 miles per hour. It's like, I'm barely hanging on, but I'm hanging on. Okay.
To interrupt real quick,
Sure.
I think on that funding formula committee, I've heard them say that there would be no losers, meaning that assuming your enrollment stayed the same, at least when they make the switch, no one's allocation
That's
would
what
go
they
down.
say. But there's also TMV, time value of money. I might have said that wrong, but anyway, thank you. But anyway, yeah. Let's move on. Next report, bond report. Oh, this is the same bond report. I want to show this every month. This is the one I said previously, no change. Again, no change. All right. That's it, I believe. I checked all the boxes. I'm going to be here for more questions, though. And all done. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Shipley? All right, thank you, Mr. Shipley. Okay, item C is our superintendent search update, and this is for me, or I'm handling this today. Really not a lot to report since our last meeting. We do have our interview schedules set where we will invite candidates into town the week of January 29th. And those candidates, when they come to town, are going to have a full day, almost a day and a half schedule where they'll be meeting with various stakeholder groups, teachers, classified, business leaders, community members, all sorts of things, getting a chance to tour our community and tour some of our schools. Most of those groups, or all those groups, will have a facilitator, and I believe in almost all the cases, I think there's one group that we're still waiting to hear back, but in the rest of the groups, we have our facilitators lined up, and people are volunteering to serve on those group committees through their buildings, at least on the staff ones. Other than that, the position's open. I think they're having some activity. It closes January 4th.
Casey, I just wanted to thank the community so far and all of the feedback and attending the focus groups. It's been helpful for us to be able to start reading your thoughts and your information.
Okay, well, that's all I have. All right, and item D is our policy discussion on 3265, which is our personal electronic devices. And so there he is. Seth is right there.
Good evening, Board Chair Morris Rowe, members of the board, Superintendent Olson. I'm going to just walk through some of the feedback that we received via our online survey that we put out the week before Thanksgiving. In your packets, you should have all of this feedback, all the comments that were received, as well as some feedback from our student councils, as well as some of the current practices at our schools. So just to kind of review, starting in November, we drafted a survey to go out to our stakeholder groups. We reviewed that, and then on the 20th of November, sent it out with about 10 days to gather feedback. We emailed it directly to our middle school and high school students, to our middle school and high school parents, and then also to our 6th through 12th grade staff. In addition, we posted it on the district website and social media accounts, and then on the 30th, we closed it. So about 10 days worth of time to respond. This is the number of responses we got. We were very surprised by how many responses we got in all categories. About 180 staff responded, 781 students, and over 1,400 family and community members. So really good responses, especially that week before Thanksgiving, really surprised us. As far as the feedback goes, there was 5 or 6 questions that were asked to all 3 groups. And so this is a question about what do you view student cell phones at school primarily as? And there was a few answer choices here. Do you view them as a communication device, as a distraction, as a learning tool, as a tool for bullying? And so you can see there in blue, the staff, primarily about 63% view them primarily as a distraction. For students, they were split, 45% said communication device, 48% roughly said learning tool. And then for parents, about 50% said communication device with distraction at about 37%. So you can kind of see some of the splits happening there between the different stakeholder groups, and really kind of makes sense and plays out throughout the survey. It's pretty consistent. This one was a scaled question. So student cell phone use at school has a positive or negative impact on learning. Again, you can really see that split between staff, students, and parents. So staff is definitely more towards the negative end, although there are quite a few in the neutral piece there. Parents were really kind of in the middle, although you had about 30% that said it had a negative impact on learning. And then for students, they were skewed towards the positive side. About 40% or so said that it has a positive impact on learning, and 25% are saying it has a very positive impact on learning. So again, a little bit of a split there.
Was there a definition of learning?
There was not a definition of learning, no.
It would matter what they're learning, okay? Right?
This question was on what should the role of schools be with regard to student cell phones. And again, you can see a little bit of a split here, although there's more consensus on this one than on some of the other ones. Teaching responsible use, about 44% of our staff said that should be our role. About 40% of parents said that should be our role as well. For teaching and modeling responsible use, about 48% of students said that should be the school's role, with about 36% of parents on that option as well, and 28% of staff. So really, I mean, if you added those two up, those two categories up, they both use the term teaching responsible use, and so I think you'd see that there's a majority of there from all three groups. And then this question was about which is more problematic, cell phone use in general or social media use specifically. You can see that both staff and parents view both as being problematic, about 56% of staff, about 37% of parents. Many of the groups also see social media as being a bigger problem. So 53% of parents and 52% of students said social media is the bigger problem than cell phone use. And then about 38% of students said neither one's an issue. And then lastly, one of the questions that was asked was which procedures would you be supportive of? And so you can see there the first option was school-based procedures. So have each school set their own procedures based on their school culture. About 29% of staff thought that one, they would be supportive of that one. You'll notice a split among the staff here. So the blue is the staff, and they're really split about 25% on each of the first four options there. The second one is in the classroom with teacher permission, and then in hallways and common areas. About 80% of students would be supportive of that. That's actually our current procedure, is in classrooms with teacher permission, and in common areas as well with the school permission. Not in classrooms, but in common areas such as hallways and at lunch, about 41% of parents said that would be one that they would be supportive of. That was the most among any of the options from our parents and families. And I think that covers all groups on that one. The fourth option there is ban all use of cell phones at school. About 28% of staff, roughly 14% of parents. One note on this question was that you could choose more than one. So the percentages there are out of the total number of people that just responded to the survey. So 80% of students chose in class with teacher or in the hallways. That's what our current procedure is again. So I did pull out some selected comments just because I know there was a lot, and so I wanted to capture some of those in the presentation. I'm not going to read all of these, but both Mr. Twitchell and Mr. Colas referred to some of these staff ones and pulled some of them out already. About 76 comments were received from our staff, and again, it was a pretty wide range from our staff. I didn't feel like there was a really strong consensus amongst our staff, both in the survey data itself and then also in the comments. Really, for me, what it comes down to is a couple things that were mentioned earlier. One is enforcement, so enforcing our policy and procedures. And then the second is education, educating our staff and students on whatever the policy and procedures are, but also educating them on responsible use of whatever devices they have, whether that be a cell phone or a school Chromebook. Really, this is an area where I feel like we have not only an issue in our schools, but a societal issue when it comes to technology. And there's a lot of emerging research when it comes to this area, when it comes to things like technology addiction. And those of you that have seen Screenagers, you kind of know a little bit about that research and know how that movie kind of tackles it. So we're going to have another screening of that movie this year, probably at all 3 of our middle schools, and then we'll follow it up with some parent nights as well. So I'll stand for any questions, and then you have a draft policy in your packet as well.
So why don't we first, if there's any questions for Seth on the data work that they've done, why don't we get those out of the way first, then we'll move on to policy discussion.
I don't have any questions other than to thank you for all that hard work. I spent hours on it this weekend reading it, and I thought you must have spent more hours putting it together than I did reading it, but thank you very much. It was very informative, very helpful to me to put my thoughts together.
And thank you for making it packaged in a way that you could, look at it and people in the audience and parents in the community could really digest it. It was great.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you as well, Seth. And it's very clear there is a wide range of opinions on this.
Yeah, this
very
is
emotional, I believe.
Yeah, this is not an easy topic, and I mean, whichever perspective you come at it from, I think it's a challenging one, and our world is really changing when it comes to technology.
I want to thank you as well. And since being on the board, this has probably been the biggest participation in a survey that we've put out to the community. We've done lots of surveys trying to get feedback, and I was astonished when the numbers came in because typically they're very low, even when regards to like changing attendance zones and such. That would also be important. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's interesting when we have over 2,400 responses on this. We had 99 on our superintendent qualification survey. What would you like to see in a superintendent? But thank you, Seth, for right.
Some of the information that was helpful was also the current practices, which was on page 90, and then page 91, the what other school districts around the region and in the state are doing. That was helpful to me also. So, because we're not out there on our own, it sounds like all the districts are trying to struggle with this issue, and that summary of what they're doing was helpful.
I wonder if you could put that up for other people that might not have seen this summary, but I appreciated that as well. It's page 91 in our packet.
So, board members, Mr. Dennison put a draft policy in there. That was crafted by a group of district and building admin that looked at some of this data and talked about practices, what's working, what's not working. I think the consensus there amongst that group, Dr. Olson had me attend that meeting, was that with our current policy, there's just a lot of confusion. I think there's a lot of different interpretations, and there's a lot of inconsistency between building and between classrooms as far as how it's enforced. One thing that stood out to me was just that inconsistency is challenging on a building. If you have one teacher who's allowing it and can control it in a certain way, and another teacher that's maybe struggling with that or is real strict, they get labeled as the bad guy teacher and the other's the nice guy teacher. It can create some interesting dynamics in the building. So I think regardless of what we do, I think what admin realized through this discussion and this survey is there needs to be greater consistency in how it's enforced, and that the buildings need to buy in and all do the same thing.
And part of our plan was to wait until we had a policy in place, and then to meet again and revamp our procedures according to the policy that the board sets.
Yeah, so thank you. What we talked about was hopefully we're going to be able to come up with a policy position here tonight and a draft policy, and we could start the 30-day comment window on that policy administration can work on procedures that would align with that policy, and then January we can look at that feedback and we can look at those procedures and move from there. So, comments? So why don't we talk about our thoughts from the survey, the draft policy, and let's see where we're at. I think our opinions are going to be probably as diverse as the 2,400 responses we saw here. And I think regardless of what we do, we're not going to find the perfect policy. We're not going to make 100% of the people happy. I think it's important that we find something that improves upon the enforceability of what we currently have, and that addresses some of the issues that we have.
Do you have a handout there?
Yeah, I have a couple. Lynn printed a couple things here. If you just want to have a hard copy in front of you, this is the draft policy that was in the board packet.
I have it.
You can put that up. And then this was the current policy. And I would say that to me, the current policy was pretty light. It has a lot of words, but doesn't say a whole lot. And it didn't really give a lot of guidance there, in my opinion. Really, the bulk of the practice is in the procedure. Now, I think that's where staff came up with the current policy, was just to make it real strong what the position of the district is.
Could I just interject one thing here?
Go ahead.
I was on the board when this policy was created, and I remember the discussions pretty well. And the spirit of this policy was never that we would be condoning the use of student cell phones over a widespread area of the schools. Never. It was simply in certain educational environments and difficult math classes, difficult science classes, challenging classes, where the district didn't provide the technology, the students could bring their technology to school with the teacher permission. And that was the heart of the whole idea behind that policy. It was never that we'd have kids all over the campus with cell phones. Never.
Seth, do you want to talk a little bit, just briefly for the board, kind of what you did as far as definitions there, just to tighten those up and separate out in the old policy or the current policy, laptops and tablets, like I use my Microsoft Surface here, they were lumped in with cell phones, and I think the desire would be to separate those out, because there are students who come in just like I do with my board packet and put it on there. I scribble my notes in the margin. I highlight things on the screen. And we don't, we're not discouraging or changing that practice, I guess.
Yeah, I was trying to differentiate between laptops and tablets and cell phones. And so you'll see some of my attempts to do that with words in the definition like handheld and portable devices. And so I struck out laptops and tablets so that we could kind of limit our discussion here to cell phones, because I think, like Board Chair Morrisroe is saying, laptops are a little bit different and would be used in different circumstances, I would think. The other piece that we had talked about in our administrative meeting was trying to define some of the legitimate educational uses. And you'll see that now in the second paragraph there. For this policy, educational purposes for personal electronic devices are defined as teacher-directed, time-bound, subject-specific activities such as, and then there's some examples that follow.
Do we have educational activities in our schools that would require a cell phone, but not a laptop, not a Chromebook, not an iPad?
Yeah, and you'll see in your survey data from staff, one of the questions I asked our staff was, do you allow cell phones in your classroom? And what do you allow their use for? So about 40% of the staff that responded to that survey said they did use student cell phones in their class currently. Calculators is one that came up more than once. graphing calculators, as you might know, are pretty expensive actually. And now you can do much of those purposes with a cell phone. So you can get an app that does like graphing calculation, for example. You can actually probably also do some of that on a Chromebook, but it's a little bit different. Another one that I heard often was like science teachers recording a lab and then having students submit that as part of their final project, let's say. So, you're doing a chemistry lab, you're recording a chemical reaction, and then you're submitting that. You could do that with a Chromebook, or you could purchase cameras or whatever for your classroom, but it's going to be a lot more challenging than a device that a student already has. There's other examples there too. Another big one is what's called student response or formative assessment. There's a lot of tools that allow you to do that. Again, you can do some of that from the Chromebook, but in many cases it might be easier from a student's cell phone. So yes, there are legitimate educational purposes.
What percent of our high school kids have a cell phone, and what percent can't afford one? I know they're now running up to $1,000 a piece. Does every student have a cell phone?
Well, I don't know the answer to that specifically because that wasn't a question on the survey. I do know that from past technology surveys where we asked our students about that, like 90 to 95% of our kids did have devices, but that doesn't necessarily mean smartphones. I think nationally the statistics are about 86% or so do have smartphones or cell phones. So it's fairly ubiquitous. I'd say you're still going to have some students though that don't have them, certainly.
And so how are they treated? How are they handled? Are they just left out?
To me, it depends on the teacher and how they frame the activity. But one thing that I've seen a lot of teachers do is give students choice with what device they use for the activity. So if you frame it that way and say, okay, we're doing this lab, we're going to record our lab, and that's going to be part of your final exam or whatever. You can use Chromebooks to record, you can use your own cell phone, you can use the 1 or 2 cameras that we have in the classroom. Then the student that uses the camera, that's their choice. They didn't necessarily say that I don't have a cell phone and so I'm not able to do this activity. But yes, that is definitely a concern with a BYOD activity or program in the school, is the equity component.
And one more, if we allow cell phone usage under very strict academic, circumstances, what do we do with all the Chromebooks and the computers and the iPads? Have we wasted a lot of money?
Well, I mean, just like I was just talking about, there's specific activities for specific devices. I mean, think about when you're on your tree farm and you're working on trimming a tree. You're not going to use an axe for everything that you're doing. You might use an axe for something and a saw for something. I mean, it's the same with any technology tool as well.
Go ahead.
I was just going to share some of my thoughts on this, that cell phones are not going away anytime soon. I'm sure if I surveyed everyone in the room minus one, we probably have our cell phone either on us, in our bag, in our coat pocket. It's just the way of the world, of life right now. And I am coming at it from a standpoint of we need digital citizenship, not just our students. There's many adults that need digital citizenship too. And if we can model this and teach this in the classroom as well, I'm for that. I'm for legitimate educational purposes for using the cell phone. It's part of life. It's going to be part of life when they graduate from high school, when they're at their jobs, when they're in college. So an all-out ban is, well, I think it's a nightmare for one, be a nightmare for teachers to enforce.
So I'm more for a policy that can be unified. I definitely think we need one, you know, that looks the same in all of our schools, because it is difficult if we have a teacher that enforces and a teacher that doesn't enforce. What does that look like? And I think some classes we haven't talked about, I know legitimate educational purposes, but also like weights. I don't have a problem with kids having music while they're lifting weights. It's, you know, that would be obvious. A teacher would be able to see if that's what they were doing, listening to music or not. Or say an art class where they're working on a project and they're able to. So I'm kind of maybe, I don't know. I thought our policy was pretty good. I like what they've got right here, but I think we're going to really have to make sure the procedures are, you know, something that people can follow and that are realistic in the world we live in. So
I think just to touch on the gym and the weights, art, those sorts of things, that was one thing district admin talked about in building admin, and talked about, you know, depending where we go with things, that those sorts of exceptions or whatever should be specified in the procedures. So, you know, weights wouldn't fall under this policy, let's say, or whatever the
well, I just think of everything that I did on my cell phone today, from it wakes me up, my alarm, I read my emails, Christmas shopped. I sadly, it is everything right at the palm of our hand, and so we get used to doing everything right then. And I kind of like being able to do that myself personally. Do I realize there's a time and place for, you know, what I'm doing on my cell phone? Absolutely. I think it's important that that's taught and modeled.
And if I can interject real quickly, that was one thing that our student council representatives spoke to, actually. Many of them are juniors and seniors and are in the process of applying to colleges, which I don't know if you've done that in a while, but there's a lot of steps to take. There's a lot of different pieces of communication that need to happen, a lot of things to remember, and so many of them said that that's actually one of the main things they're using their phones for right now. They'll go meet with a counselor, take some notes on their phone, you know, maybe call a college real quickly on a break. And so I think that's another thing to consider, I think, is to be thinking about college and career readiness and how this fits in to all of that as well.
Yes, our calendar. I also saw someone who spoke tonight use their cell phone reading from their notes on their cell phone.
I'd like to make some comments, and this is all right, Casey. This may take some time, because what I did, what I'm going to do is pass out to the board members here and some of the staff members kind of some draft language that I came up with. I haven't shared this with anybody yet because I didn't want to get into an open meeting violation, so I didn't share this over the weekend, Maureen back there. So I just am passing this out, and what I would like to do is I would like to read and go over some of this and then have a discussion. It's just a place to start our discussion. I'm not wed to the final wording here, but what I did do is I thought about this a lot over the weekend. I read with great interest what Seth had said. Seth, I guess I can get you a copy too here if you'd like. I didn't make a whole lot, or Lynn made the copies, didn't make a ton of them. But, and, or you can put it on the screen if you want. And this is, again, just for starting. I did talk to the principals of our 3 high schools. I also talked to some teachers, and then basically just studied this issue as much as I could. So this wording is this, again, draft information. It says by me. So, what I want to do is read it and then discuss certain parts of it and then answer questions of the board and debate some of the issues here. But basically it says the board recognizes the potential disruption to the learning environment caused by student personnel electronic devices. That was something that Casey had in his wording there. I said Furthermore, students in the Coeur d'Alene School District may possess a personal electronic device on school grounds. However, it is to be completely powered off and not in the physical possession of a student within a classroom. Now, what I mean by that is that if a student has a cell phone, it's not on their person. It's either in maybe it might be in a cubby at the front of the office, might be, or at the front of the classroom, it might be in their backpack, and that's away from them. But I think one of the problems has been with kids having cell phones on them and it being a distraction. And we can talk about that further. An exception to this policy would be when a PED is authorized and supervised by a teacher for specific educational purpose only when other electronic devices such as school-provided laptop computer, desktop computer, Chromebook, or similar electronic devices is unavailable. So we've just spent $1 million or so on these devices. I think those should be the ones we use over cell phones. That's just, again, something for us to talk about. Students may use PEDs on school grounds outside of the classroom only with the permission of the principal of that school and in compliance with school district policy and procedures, and I listed those. The extent of a student's use of a PED outside of a classroom will be decided by the principal in consultation with the teachers and superintendent. This decision will be based on what best enhances the educational mission of the school as well as student discipline and safety. Now, what I mean by that is that the principals I talked to were divided about, well, they were united in the fact they'd like to make the decision on this issue in their schools, but they're divided on what is the appropriate, or what is the decision that they wanted. But so I thought about this a lot, and I thought, we're always talking about our educational professionals here. My bias clearly is to support our staff. And if a school, in consultation with the staff, if the superintendent thinks that cell phones can be used at lunch or they can be used in passings, then that's up to them. That's up to that school to make that decision. I do think that the previous paragraph there about there being completely powered off and not in the physical position of a student within a classroom should be throughout the district. Okay, but as far as this other issue, which I think is a controversial issue, is about having cell phones on at other times, that's a decision I think should be left up to the school. But again, we can talk about that. So students' use of PEDs anywhere on school grounds at any time will only be authorized after a student and his or her parents have signed and submitted the Coeur d'Alene School District Student Technology Use Agreement. My understanding, that's not being signed by as much as it should be. If people aren't, that was part of our previous policy, and I think it should be. People should sign that so they understand what our rules are. Everybody should sign that who brings a cell phone on school grounds. Okay. Students with a medical problem as documented by a physician in which a PED is necessary to monitor the medical condition may apply for an exception to the PED policy. And what I mean by that, I've talked to some teachers and staff who've talked about that there are some kids who, on their phones, they have an app or something that helps monitor their blood sugar, or they may have other kinds of medical condition that where the cell phone technology is helpful for them in monitoring their medical condition. And so I think that should be an exception, clearly. And maybe that would be in a 504 plan, maybe it's not. I guess that's something that the staff can answer better than I can. I don't always understand the whole 504 process, but I'm just trying to make a point here is that obviously if there's a medical condition, that's an exception. I agree with the definitions of the PED provided in the packet. I mentioned that. I also agree with the wording on 3265P2 with the policy or the procedure. However, I think the requirement for students to use a district-provided filtered internet on a PED is for practical purposes unenforceable, particularly out of a classroom. I just think it's unenforceable. You've got kids sitting, if you got a couple hundred kids sitting in the lunchroom, and let's say a school authorizes them to be on their cell phones in the lunchroom. Is it really practical for staff members, somebody like Bruce, to be walking around and asking, are you sure you're on the district Wi-Fi? That's, I've been told by staff that's a nightmare. Don't ask us to do that. It's impossible. We can't do it. And I think so I think for all practical purposes, to expect that all these phones, if they're allowed to be used under those circumstances, are going to be on the district Wi-Fi is not an enforceable policy. I don't think that's workable. It'd be nice if it was, but I don't think it is. And I don't think, I know there's few teachers out here, I don't think they want to be pulling phones. Oh my gosh, you're not on the Wi-Fi, you're on your Verizon thing or something. I just think it's not very practical outside of a classroom. Okay. As far as the consequences for misuse of electronic devices, which is in our board policy here, or procedure, excuse me. The first offense is confiscation of the personal electronic device and returned in the office, and parent guardian will be required to pick up the device after a meeting with the administrator. And the second offense is confiscated, and the student is prohibited from using it for the remainder of the school year. I think we cracked down on this. Second time, you lose it for the rest of the school year. Sorry. Third offense is it's confiscated, and student is prohibited from possessing a PED while a student at the Coeur d'Alene School District. They've just lost that privilege, whatever. So if they're a freshman, they got 4 years without having a cell phone on the school campus. But I think we really need to crack down on misuse of it. I think that needs to be enforced and needs to be strong. And then there's other things in the current policy or in current procedures. It talks about other disciplinary actions, such as suspension or expulsion in extreme cases, or trying to recoup the resources that we spended trying to enforce the policy, et cetera. So again, my thought behind this whole thing was we need to protect the educational environment, particularly in a classroom, and that cell phones, from what I've heard, have become disruptive. Even the staff say that. If you add up the parents and the staff cumulatively, 99% of them saw them as a distraction. 62% of the staff, 36% of the parents. I think that they're a problem in the classroom. I think they don't need to be on, and they need to be off. They shouldn't be in their physical presence. Maybe they leave them in a locker. Maybe they leave them in a backpack. Maybe they leave them, but they're not on their physical presence. I've heard a number of stories of kids, looking down at their phone. Or they have earbuds in. They feel the phone vibrate in their pocket. It's just the potential problems for that. I just think they're not on they can maybe be in the classroom, but they're not on them. They maybe are in a box at the front of the classroom that the teacher has. I don't care how you do it. That's up for the staff to figure that one out, but they're not in their physical possession. So I think we need to protect the classroom environment. The teachers control that and use existing technology which we have to existing technology which we have, and take the cell phone out of the mix. That's my place, where I'm coming from. Again, then the issue becomes, what do we do outside the classroom? And that's what I think we all needed to be debating here. Some schools, well, at least Lake City for the last while, has said you can't have them on from the time you walk in to the time you leave. The schools have said that they're okay at lunch hour, and that they feel like they can monitor them well, and the kids are going to go out to the car anyway and look at it out in their car. So, so I guess that's one of the areas of debate. But anyway, I just wanted to put this down as a place for us to start. This is some of my thinking, but I'm not wed to this, but I am wed to the idea of controlling cell phones within the classroom and protecting the educational environment. And one more thing, I want to emphasize the part that I underlined there. The decision to use cell phones outside of a classroom, whether it's in passing, whether it's at lunch hour, is based on what is best enhances the educational mission of the school, as well as student discipline and safety. That, to me, is a critical issue. Whatever decision the school comes up with, they're able to justify that to their staff, justify it to the administration, justify it to the board, that this is the policy we think works best for our school. So I stand for questions.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
I just think about technology, and I think Apple loves you because every student is going to be buying the Apple Watch, and how are we going to ban watch use? So I think technology is just changing, and all you have to do is wear your Apple Watch, and you're texting, and you have access to a device, and so this policy becomes completely unenforceable. I hear what you're saying, and I think that we need to discuss ways to protect teacher time. But it must be through a policy that's consistent and enforceable and does not burden teachers with confiscating electronic devices. cell phones. It'll be a necklace someday that they can wear and send a text. But technology is ever changing, and we need to be one step ahead of it. So I think this is great work, and it's a good start, but I don't know that we could even enforce this with current technologies that we have.
I think we can, and I think in your wording, isn't it, Seth? You have electronic wearable or handheld equipment.
We cannot demand
or future technologies, right?
Then we're going to ask them to put their phone and their watch in a bin when they walk into the classroom?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Maybe poll the teachers and admin to see their thoughts on that, but that would
or
be
whatever somehow that
ridiculous.
they're not on their person. They're not on their person. Yeah, one of the administrators I talked to thought that would be a great solution.
Not on them
that
at
the board
all.
gets to be the bad person. The board gets to be the bad one. They can tell their students sorry. The board says you can't have it on you when you go into a classroom.
I just want to say, beyond this is, we can discuss this, but my personal comments were, I thought what was most impactful for me were the number of parents and community members that completed this survey. There were 1,443, and of those, 94% were parents. So thank you, parents who gave your feedback. And what I took away from your feedback is you agree there is a problem, that we need to do better with our class time, but you also clearly communicated to me that you want access to your child and that your child deserves access to their phone under a fair policy that we can come up with. And 1,443 parents, or almost, in 10 days, let us know how they're feeling, and we must listen to that. And I highlighted some of the comments, down the road if we want to hear some of them now, but they were moving comments, and there was some frustration that there are teachers that are not enforcing our current policy, but primarily from parents it was, they want access to their children. They want teachers to enforce current policies. Nobody wants to see a child texting, listening to music, and disrespecting a teacher. And we need to do better to ensure that that's not happening.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a math teacher in one of our high schools. It wasn't Lake City. And the math teacher said, look, Dave, I can do you tell me what to do. I can be dealing with cell phone problems all day long, or I can teach math. What's the answer to this? And my answer is teach math. The technology is overwhelming us. This is not an easy problem to solve. There's no easy fix other than to just simply ban this stuff from the first bell to the last bell. That's where my heart is and where my gut is, but I don't know how we can do that. But how do we continue with all of these distractions, all of these disruptions? I was a classroom teacher for 43 years. I would not want to spend 1 minute of my day dealing with a cell phone problem with some kid for the 18th time, or the first time. There's got to be some way we can find some path forward that solves this. Or are we going to agree that it's unsolvable? Is it unsolvable? Because I know that even the most advanced kids are sitting in those top level classes, sitting there with their cell phone in their pocket, and when they're taking a test and they don't know the answer or they can't remember a formula, they're just slipping it out of their pockets and one-handed looking at the formula and putting it away and continuing on. This is outrageous. We can't have this. We can't have these in our classrooms. I don't know. I'm thinking of two boys who may have words at the start of school before the first bell, and by third period, 800 kids in the school now know that they're going to meet by the flagpole at such and such a time and duke it out because of social media. Is it the cell phone that's the problem, or the social media that's the problem? I don't know. Does anybody have a simple solution to this other than to just ban these things?
To respond to Lisa's comment about parents wanting access to their student, I think, no question about that. And that's why I think if a school decides it wants to allow the cell phones during the passing period or during lunch break, there's the access to the student. Shouldn't be in the classroom. That's where I'm coming from.
Right, but it can be on their person at a high school level. I think we can talk about middle school. I see in here that we have a middle school that allows students on their cell phones at lunch. I don't agree with that, but I think at a high school level, when we're talking about young adults, who some of them are 18, they have right to carry their device with them. It should be used appropriately. That's fine.
Do you believe it should be powered off?
think we follow our policy and we come up with a policy that directs that. And I think if the teacher is using that for whatever tool at that moment, it is powered on. If it is not being used, it is powered off. I think it can be enforced. It hasn't been enforced. It will be difficult and it'll require a lot more work on how we enforce it. But if we do it appropriately, it can be done.
I mean, so a couple things I'd say here. I think enforcement is the key. And as I said earlier, I think there's a lot of differences in practices amongst the buildings and even inside the buildings. Principal Lilliquist from Canfield was at this admin meeting that I was at, and they probably have the strictest policy in our district, which is they're powered off from the morning bell till the end of the day. And at least he reported he has very little issues anymore. Usually at the beginning of the year they crop up, but it's because they enforce it, and they enforce it building wide. And so as he gets to this time of year, it's a non-issue. The students have learned what the expectation is, just like anything else we do. I like what you did, Tom, especially with the part about when a district provided device is unavailable or isn't suffice, or however we want to say that. I like that idea. I have concerns about powered off, not in their possession. Powered off, I don't really care about that. No concern there, but not in possession. As Trustee Eubank said, some of these phones are $1,000 now. I think having them in lockers and backpacks and those sorts of things, the amount of theft is just going to skyrocket on them. And I think that's something we need to be careful of. I think with the old policy, that's what I heard was a big problem with it, was just lost cell phones, stolen cell phones, that sort of thing, when there was the outright ban. So if a kid wants to have it in their pocket, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I am okay with powered off because they are a distraction in the classroom. Could they be a tool? Yes, but I think more often than not, they're a distraction.
Well, one of the administrators I talked to said that it would be a great relief to their staff. This person thought, anyway, if they were powered off and no longer in the kids' possession. That, and again, how the school or teacher handles that is up to them. You're the ones in the classroom. I just think that the temptation to having this cell phone in their pocket, it's just too much of a problem. I just think there's been too many examples of kids, powering them back on. Kids, I've heard of stories of, kids having earbuds where they're listening to music in class. It's, I think if they're not on their, it can be in the classroom somewhere. It could be, why couldn't it be in a little cubby hole thing at the front of the classroom? You just stick your cell phone in there when you walk in and pick it up at the end of the classroom. And if you need them that day, the teacher will tell you, get your cell phone, we're going to use it. But in most cases, you wouldn't be needing it because you have laptops, desktops, and other devices in there.
I think Nick Lilliquist at Canfield has solved this problem with basically turn it off and put it away from the first bell to the last bell. And they're moving forward, educating kids and not having to deal with this. I mean, as unsavory as that may seem, if you allow kids to receive text messages from mom, I'm going to pick you up at 3 o'clock on the corner or whatever, who's to say that other messages aren't coming through all day long? And if I'm teaching a class and I notice little Johnny in the third row is, texting frantically back and forth to maybe mom, maybe dad, maybe Chester in Pennsylvania or whatever, how am I supposed to know? I just think that this is putting too much of a strain on our teachers, and I think it's too big of a distraction for what we're primarily here to do. With all of this money and all of these resources, we're here to educate kids. I don't want to be a policeman for cell phones all day long, and I know teachers are doing that. And we've got to find some way, however we do this, we've got to find some way to get teachers off the hook so they can teach and not deal with cell phones.
It seemed to me, you know, from both the teacher and the parent and community opinion, that it was frustration with inconsistency with our current policy, and that some teachers enforce it and some teachers don't. And so it created an environment where nobody was really sure. There was a good teacher, bad teacher. So if we could have a policy that leveled the playing field and being really clear to delineate, are we talking about middle school or high school? Because I believe they are different animals. I think our policy should be directed towards middle school and towards high school, and maybe we could clarify that in here. But yeah, I think it needs to be a policy that's enforced, unified, both campuses. Otherwise, I think it's too difficult.
Yeah, that the levels are currently addressed in the procedures, and that was kind of admin's wishes. If you look at the current procedures now, actually elementary is no cell phones at all. And I think the talk was maybe a little further defining those. You know, Nick was very adamant about what he does works for his building. I'll tell you, Jeff Bankston at Lakes, they experimented last year, I think, with their 8th graders only, where they started allowing them to have their phones at lunch, and it solved a lot of issues that they were having. They expanded it this year, and I believe it's 6th through 8th can have their phones at lunch. They cannot have them in passing periods, and none of the middle school teachers wanted that because, you know, it's hard enough to get a kid on to class on time already. So,
and Venture was similar to that also.
Venture changed
allows
their
them
policy
at,
this year.
allows them at lunch, but not otherwise.
Yeah, but again, that's the schools making that decision what works best in their school, and that's why I put that wording in there. Let them decide that. Let the principal decide that with consultation with their staff and consultation with the superintendent. They make that decision about what works best on that issue.
You know, to start,
I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't care if it's different at Coeur d'Alene High School to Venture, as long as staff agrees that that's the way it should be.
to begin to move forward here, and I'm probably the most hostile one to having cell phones in schools in this room because I taught school for a long time, and I understand the importance of minimizing the distractions and the disruptions. I would be okay with cell phones being able, you can use your cell phone at lunchtime. I like the little paragraph you put in here about the medical problem documented by a physician. I wouldn't want to see that now all of a sudden we have 8,000 medical issues documented by the same doctor, okay? But, you know, I could go for those two. But in the classroom, absolutely no way. I don't think there should be any of that in there. Unless it's a special activity, a special assignment in one of those classrooms where cell phone usage would be, you know, a help.
Mm-hmm. Trustee Hearn, can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure. Again, this is just draft information. I'm not.
So some of these seem like they would go into the procedures. Would you be okay with tabling some of them to possibly be included in our procedures that we come up with?
Absolutely. If fine. Yeah. However this fits, that's fine. I agree that some of this is procedural. I just want to put those ideas out that I thought needed to be discussed. But you're right. They should be moved in. Some should be in procedures. Some should be in policy.
So the draft statement we had that was in the packet says similar things. I think it's similar to our old policy. It maybe tightens it up. It's a little more specific. I think even I've heard Trustee Eubanks say this, that he wants to reduce the use in classrooms to legitimate education purposes. You're okay with lunch at a building level decision. Is it fair enough?
Yes, but the legitimate educational purpose would be at the behest of the teacher. What I don't think we should have is dead time in a classroom where there's really nothing going on, and now you have 20 kids sitting around, you know, playing with their cell phones and doing things they shouldn't be doing.
Sure.
It'd have to be academic, it'd have to be educational.
Right. And we, you know, the admin talked about that they're going to have to do that education if that's the route we went. That just because you finished your assignment doesn't mean you go on your phone and text or do whatever, if that's the way the policy is going. There's one thing in Tom's language that I liked that I'd like to see us incorporate if we could, if we were going to go with that draft statement, which was, you know, when a district device is not available, or, you know, I'm not sure what the correct wording is there. Personally, I like that. So if they can do it with a Chromebook, I just assume they do it with a school Chromebook. We know it's on a secure network. We know, you know, it's going to be filtered and all those sorts of things, as opposed to a kid using or a student using their cell phone.
I'm certainly good with that.
To me, I think that makes sense. We've spent a lot of money. We've gone to one-to-one devices almost, in our secondary schools at least. So I think that makes it clear for the teachers. I saw a few head nods, that if you can use a Chromebook, you use a Chromebook. If it's something you can't do on a Chromebook, then, and it's for a real reason, for instructional purposes, that cell phones would be permitted.
So are we defining a real reason for instructional purposes, intentional education purposes? Because that can be a nightmare as well. And how are we okaying that? How is staff going to be getting it okayed to be using in the classroom, and how are we going to enforce that? And can an administrator just be walking around and go in and pop in a classroom and they're using it, and then the teacher go, oh, it's a legitimate educational purpose? So I wonder what that's going to look like, because our administrators and our teachers deal with so much already. We don't need them monitoring and having to pop in classrooms daily.
So one possible procedure that we did talk about was having the permission of an administrator. So if you're doing a classroom activity where cell phones would be necessary, you would do that, giving your
give a heads up
building
and
principal
email.
a heads up. Yeah, exactly.
And you talked, an important part of this is education, right? Enforcement and education, that was a real issue.
Exactly.
I 100% agree with that.
Yep.
We'd be educating the staff on whatever the new policy we settle on, and enforcing it, because there has been inconsistent enforcement around the district.
Something new to that policy, the draft one at least that was in our book or in our packet, was a definition of what educational purpose means. It's broad, but I think they were trying to catch, give some teacher discretion there, but make it purposeful. It's teacher led. It's
time bound, subject specific.
Purpose.
Yes. Yeah.
I just don't want a lot of work for the teachers in getting it okayed. So I would
And
be
that,
fine
that was
with,
the other concern with that
Yes.
was, are we adding more red tape when, sometimes you're in the moment in the classroom, a good idea comes up, you want to use that legitimately. Maybe, we're adding another layer here that doesn't necessarily, when, we might already have procedures that work awesome, but if they're not being enforced uniformly,
Right.
we don't know that, So I think, again, it comes back to education and enforcement, regardless of what the policy or procedures are.
You're a technology guy, so you can probably help me out with this, though, but I just can't get away from in my mind, if we ban cell phones, kids are going to be flipping to their watches and their other, hand or wearables. How would you how would you interpret that? What would be your thought?
I think regardless, even if you go to a complete all-out ban, I think it's challenging to enforce. And several of the teachers spoke to that in their comments as well, that even when there was a complete ban, that was challenging to enforce as well. And Canfield would tell you that even with a ban from bell to bell, they still see cell phones sometimes. But do they confiscate every single phone every single time when maybe it's just in a kid's backpack or it's in a kid's pocket and they're not even using it? Probably not. So I think it's challenging whether it's a full-out ban or whether we're allowing kids some appropriate use. Regardless, it's an enforcement issue. And I think one of the things for me that it comes back to is classroom management. And so I actually was the teacher that did the cubbies at the front of the room and had kids put their phones in. Or, if I'm teaching a lesson and we're using phones, I might have kids have them on the corner of their desk in what I called the dock. And so they put their phones in the dock so that I know that phone is there, it's face down, it's not in their pocket. Maybe I make sure that it's silenced or whatever. That comes back to classroom management, I think. And so, again, it comes back to enforcement and education.
I would just like to see a policy that is enforceable, so we have some consistency. So in another year, 2 years, or 3 years, technology changes, parents are mad, students are mad, we're coming back and we're having this conversation again. So if we can wrap our mind around an enforceable policy that isn't burdensome with procedures. I worry about adding, X, Y, and Z, and teachers having to call down to say, I had this great idea, and we're gonna do a poll, or whatever is the latest and greatest. I like the idea. Is it a doc? Is it wherever they are? But we need to give teachers the ability to teach in the classroom. And if we are burdening them with policy or procedure, it's difficult.
Yeah,
it's already difficult.
And I do think the powering off gets closer to that, because that's pretty easy to monitor whether a device is on or off. I mean, that takes a quick glance. As to your wearables question, because I don't think I answered that, you will notice that there was an addition to the definition, which included wearables, because I was thinking about things like smartwatches and glasses and some of those things that we'll probably start dealing with more in the future.
I think another important part of this, if you looked at the procedures now, it's like 3 pages, maybe 4 pages, it's long. So I think, just for us, you start getting to page 2, we're losing interest. And so the same thing happens with parents, students, staff. I think tightening that up, they talked about, those grade, breaking out the expectations, so the punishments at elementary might be different than high school, or the rules or whatever. That's all important. I think we could talk about this all night, but I don't think we want to. So why don't we try to move it forward? Dr. Olson, did you have some comments?
Yeah, just a couple of short comments. This is like a snow day decision on steroids. There is no right answer. We've had this discussion nationally. We've had it statewide. Our last Region 1 superintendent's presentation, the only district that had it down was the district that had no cell phone service. So they have no problems. They have no issues. That was real clear. Let me make a suggestion on how we can move forward here. There's a lot of valuable input and a lot of valuable information, and I think we're all closer to consensus than we know we are. Let me make a couple of suggestions, and that is we've taken copious notes relative to the comments that have been made. We can use Trustee Hearn's template and the original template, and perhaps a redraft some of the areas of the policy standard. I think over the next period between today and when we break for the holiday, that we should do some drafting and move those drafts back and forth between and among trustees, so that you have a chance to weigh in individually on what you're seeing, give feedback so we can shape this, and that we bring this back in January with you having had a chance to work on it over the next couple of weeks previous to the holiday. My concern about procedures is this, and you may recall when we talked last that our secondary administrators with whom we met and had a robust discussion about this, and who weighed in on taking responsibility to go back to their constituencies and coming up with procedures and a consensus view, if you will, are willing to do that. My concern is we've got about 2 weeks with 8,452 things happening along with the instructional program between now and the holiday break. For them to realistically be able to get this, get a policy draft and work off the policy draft for procedures and have it ready in January, I think is wishful thinking. So let's do this. Let's pull the comments, the information, the input that you gave tonight. Give us a chance to work on policy drafts, work those back and forth until we're coming closer to consensus, and then bring back another policy draft at our January meeting. If that stands, the diverse but healthy views evidenced in tonight's discussion, we can use that as a first reading, put it out for the appropriate reading period, bring it back for action but simultaneous with that action will be a presentation in February from the secondary administrators on procedures. Does that make sense?
The back and forth would be with Seth, not between ourselves.
Yeah,
We can't do that.
I was going to say, I liked everything you said except the back
We
and
can't go
forth.
back and forth on policy suggestions without open meeting issues.
We would not be able to send you copies of the draft policies and ask you to weigh in individually?
No, you could, but then we'd have to forward them to Seth,
And
probably.
that's fine, that's fine.
Not to each other.
He'll be the prime mover on this, based on knowledge base and thick skin. And honestly, Seth has been masterful in this whole, bringing reasonableness to this whole discussion, not only with our district, but with the districts in our region and our state. So we've got a real gem here in a resource person that can pull this together and help us choreograph this back and forth to closure. Does that make sense? Yep. So with your permission, we'll proceed on that path?
I'm fine with it, absolutely.
Yeah, my hope in this ultimately is that our teachers can teach and our kids can learn without distraction. That's what we want.
And I think there's consensus on this and finding the way to make it work. And I think you said it well. There's different settings and different buildings that'll make it go, but there are standards that apply to every building that we need to have in our policy and where appropriate in the procedure. Okay?
Good.
Fine, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olson. Okay, next up is E, and this says property search here, but really admin was looking for a little guidance here as far as what our expectations are. I think we talked when we met previously about at our January meeting, making some decisions on our elementary school land, where we're going, and what our plan is. And we had asked them to do a number of things. I think they're just looking for some direction, what our expectations are, so they're sure they're meeting those for us. So I believe we asked them to survey. And do we want them surveying elementary school families?
I thought we were going to wait. Long Range Planning was going to do some work, and we were going to wait to hear some of their feedback. But I could be mistaken.
Well, that's why we're having the conversation. So, we're going
I think the survey would mostly be applicable if we were directly moving in the direction of the Hayden Lake site. But if there are other options and we have more than one option, I think we could probably hold off on the survey, in my opinion, but.
Trustee Eubanks or Mr. Hearn, Pickford? Do we want to hold off on surveying it? I mean, it's going to be a challenging time to do that. My concern, I know at least one concern I would voice is if we're trying to open a school for September of 2019, I don't know that we can wait a whole lot beyond January to make a decision. Now, our decision may be that we're okay if it's December of 2019 or
Well, I
sorts of
don't think it has to be necessarily January 1, but, as we get into spring, I think there's been talk that we need to be moving quickly towards a direction, but I would hate to see so much pressure that at the next board meeting, we're going to vote and decide where this, I don't think we have all the information for that yet.
We have to set a deadline on this because we are running out of time.
I agree.
And we don't want to end up trying to open a school in November of 19.
Right.
Or any other month in 19, just September.
I think some of the information that we were looking for was the amount of money available to purchase this land was one thing that we'd requested.
Right.
We're waiting for Long Range Planning to give us their feedback, and that will be at the next board meeting, which will be January. I was interested in seeing, if we're looking at the Hayden Lake site, what busing looks like, and I don't know how we would get that information, but busing and or traffic studies of that area if we're going to have a school of 550 to 600. And a survey if that's the actual site that we're going with.
If we're surveying, I wouldn't mind having that information myself, the survey portion of it. Are we asking, there could be a couple questions. One, would you be okay with building a school at Hayden Lake site? Would you rather we delay opening a school to find, the right site or a different site, or to be able to pursue these other sites.
Or spend
Do
more.
we want to ask those types of questions? Or do you think we're not there yet?
I don't think we're there yet. We need to make a decision. We need to make a decision what we're going to buy, and then go from there, it seems to me. And that's, obviously, you've been working hard on this. It's obviously up in the air. We don't know what we're going to buy yet.
We need to make a
Buy
decision.
something, or we're going to redo Hayden Lake Elementary. That seems like the two options we have on the table. As far as buying other things, that seems to be been an ongoing problem here for months. So, but I'm willing to be patient on that. But I think there is a time limit. I agree with Mr. Eubanks. We need to decide if we don't have another piece of property by such and such a date, we're going with the Hayden Lake Elementary side. And then how are we going to make that work? That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, so why don't we hold off on survey? There was a talk of a public forum or something like that. We'll hold off on that. Let's let long-range planning meet next week, I believe is when they meet. And then we'll sort that out at our January 8th meeting, or sooner perhaps, based on feedback.
And we're going to need to schedule a drop dead date,
We're not going to get.
Right.
by which time we have to make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty clear last time, at least in Brian Martin and the architect's view, is that we're pushing it if we go too much beyond January, if we want to open in the fall of 19. Now, that could be January 31st.
Close, by early spring.
Well, be reminded that you have several touch points in January and February, where you have a budget meeting on the 19th of January. You might, if you have the information necessary to make a good decision, schedule something then, do something at the February meeting, or previous to the budget meeting in February. So you've got several touch points outside of the superintendent search process, which will occupy substantial amounts of your time and energy. And not that these other touch points won't, but you'll have some windows of opportunity. And I would concur that we have some important meetings with long-range planning this week to do some agenda setting, the 11th to engage in a discussion about options, pluses and minuses, and engage the membership, many of whom have had a history with discussions on property purchases. So some of those folks are not babes in the woods to this discussion, but really need to be updated as to where we are and what the choices are at this particular stage, and what the plus side and negative side. And they can also help us identify pluses and challenges with both sites, and then hone that and keep moving it forward until we can come to you with some substance to a recommendation and a solid rationale. And that my suggestion is from what I remember hearing from our architects and from our people, we should do that by February if we're going to try to open a school on the target dates that we've established.
So we better enjoy our vacation
That's
coming
right.
up, because
Every
we're going to be
minute.
really busy, right?
Every minute.
Okay.
Yeah, you just took a 5-hour meeting and you added more time to it. Okay.
You get paid well, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's move along because we're dragging on here a little bit. So who's batting for Trina tonight?
That would be me.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the pinch hitter for the pinch hitter. Dr. Nelson is in Boise, and Dr. Cottle is out sick tonight. So I can't say that I have a ton of information for you. You saw this last month as information. Essentially, it comes down to a clerical change.
This is new for information.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of agenda planning, sorry. So this is a clerical change, essentially. We have a local requirement that our students, a local graduation requirement that our students take world history, which is currently in our district classified under humanities. However, the state defines humanities a specific way, and as part of that, there's a performance requirement. So there's a couple specifics to humanities, and that's one of them. So this would essentially be moving the world history requirement from humanities into social studies. So the same number of credits would still be required of our students. Again, it's really just a clerical change, moving it from humanities and into social studies.
Okay, any questions on this? This
Yeah,
will be
I
back
have
next
one.
month in action, for action.
Yeah, I've asked this question in the past, and I'm going to ask it again. Do we know what our graduating students know in terms of history and civics? How literate are our kids in historical knowledge and civic understanding? Do we have any statistics on this?
Are you asking
That's
me
the
as the
pinch-
director of
pinch hitter.
technology?
I'm asking anybody.
Okay.
Bruce.
There
Or are
is
they
a
just taking classes and they get their grades and then they move on, and we really don't know that they know basic, things in history?
So there is a civics exam that was implemented, I think, 2 years ago as a state requirement. So we have that data. And I believe it's in Skyward, and so Mike can probably get a report for you. I'll speak for him on that one, I guess. Beyond that, I think every teacher probably has an end-of-course exam as well that they're measuring their students by as well. So
I'd like to see something. I taught high school history for many years, and I'd like to just see what our kids are expected to know and do know.
It is a graduation requirement, that test that you're talking about. And so if they fail, they have to take it again until they pass it. And I believe it's very similar to the test that immigrants take to get citizenship.
And of course, what we expect them to know is online on our website it'd be under the curriculum, under I'm not exactly sure where you go to find them, but the standards are online somewhere on our website.
And are these standards just for world history, or do we have American history standards as well?
So these aren't a change in standards. This is a change of where it's placed
I get that.
in our graduation
I get that.
requirements here.
As an aside, I wanted to know what the standards are and where we stand with the standards, with meeting them.
Great question for Dr.
I'll run
Nelson.
it by Mike,
yes.
okay?
But it looks like someone's trying to find that for us. But
yeah, it's under it's under departments and then curriculum. Are you referring to the graduation requirements or to the curriculum guides?
Yeah, I think they're both going to be there, correct?
Yeah. So I see the curriculum guides here. The Idaho core standards are here. And I believe you can drill down into them over here on the right. Graduation requirements, I'll see if I can find that link for you as well. I know it's posted on our website, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
I'm good.
All right. Okay. Item G is our policy for information tonight. There's a whole slew of them that have come mainly from ISBA recommendations. Are we splitting these up, or Seth, are you pinch hitting on those two, or?
Mainly for the first one, the drone policy.
Okay.
I don't think any of the other ones are ones that I could speak to. I'll do my best.
So why don't we do it this way? We've had an opportunity to read through those policies. Is there any questions on these? On page 134 of our packet, it gives just the policy title, the reason why it's here for a change. Most of them, as I said, are ISBA related, with the exception of 2175, a drone policy is new, and 7325 was a new policy, I think, from Katie Ebner, just for clarifying purposes on fundraising by external entities, Excel, CEP, those sorts of things.
Can you tell me why we're doing a drone policy? Seth, is there something is that a law now or something, or what? Are we just trying to get ahead of the game here?
We're trying to get ahead of the game. There's been a lot of interest from our staff, and you may know that there are several drone manufacturers here in our region. And so the time has come to kind of get ahead of it, have a policy in place, and then we're going to develop some procedures to go along with that. There's lots of educational uses for drones and many job opportunities that come along with that. And so several schools have started developing programs in their CTE departments, and that's kind of where we want to head with it as well.
A lot of FAA has a lot of rules on it. Our insurance carrier, I think I heard, had some concerns. So that's
so we've kind of
that's
worked
why.
through a lot of those, and so now we're ready to have a policy before you, and then we'll develop some of the procedures that will go along with that.
How would this apply, Johnny gets a new drone for Christmas and takes it down to Coeur d'Alene High School playground, or not playground, but field to fly it. Are they prohibited from doing that?
Yes, that actually is prohibited by the FAA. So we own our airspace, and then the FAA, of course, gives us direction as to how we can use it in specific areas. But yeah, that would be prohibited. That would probably be a part of the procedures. Would be posting some signage that says, that sort of use is prohibited unless approved by the administration.
Okay, well, we should approve it before Christmas, right? I mean, that's going to happen. I don't know. I'm just thinking about if I had got a drone, where you'd want to clear a big area to fly it, right? School would become.
Yeah, and
blind.
this isn't necessarily. For off school time drone usage, yeah, we don't really want that to be happening. This is more referring to instructional use of drones in our classrooms, or I guess outside of our classrooms, hopefully.
Okay, any other questions on these 11 or 12 policies? Do you have your mic on there, Lisa? On 5710.
5710, but now I can't find the page it's on. I'm sorry. It was on the paraprofessionals, the last sentence. But if it's coming back there, it wasn't anything urgent. I think the sentence ended without punctuation, or I couldn't tell if maybe it was missing just a word or two.
Page 162 is what it is.
162. Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm almost there. There we go. Oh yeah. Where's the required standards? Oh shoot. Sorry. It was right. It's about the standards. Oh, well, I can't find it.
Okay, well, these will be out for comment period for 30 days. You'll get a chance to read them again next month in our packet, and then we'll have them for action. If it's something you see punctuation or word order or something like that, you can just email in on those and she can correct those on the fly. Or push them to the right person to correct them on the fly.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, let's move on to action items. Number H, or letter H, was a new course, or were new course proposals from Lake City High School. Seth is playing the part of Dr. Nelson again.
Exactly, yeah.
Where's your bow tie?
I forgot it at home. Yes, this is for 2 new course proposals, which you saw last month for information. Reading is Thinking and Photojournalism, both at Lake City High School. And so we bring those back for action.
Okay, this starts on page 182. Was there any questions on these? I'm not sure that.
I'll do my best.
Can we sign up for the photojournalism?
If there are questions, we probably have to table. If there are no questions, is there a motion to approve new course proposals, Reading is Thinking and Photojournalism as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
To approve new course proposals, Reading is Thinking and Photojournalism as presented.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Okay, policy for action. We had a number of policies back from last month that we saw. Is about half the 8,000 section and then a couple of bond-related ones. Ms. Town, do you know if we had any comments on those policies?
There were no comments received.
Okay. So no comments received. Is there a motion to approve? I'm going to split these up, I guess. Is there a motion to approve section 8,000 as presented?
So moved.
Does that work?
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And then we'll lump these two together. Is there a motion to approve policy 7700 and 7710 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on these? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Call for committee reports. Is there any committee reports?
Well, I attended the first ad hoc math committee, and I will tell you that is a stellar group. Wow, it was a great first meeting, and just going around the room for introductions, I was in awe. So I'm very excited and grateful for our community members and staff and administrators that are going to be a part of that committee.
Tamper, can you tell us how you guys are going to study the issue? Like, do you have a plan in place, or what's it look like?
We just had the first meeting, so kind of looked at numbers, looked at basically a couple different paths, a traditional path, which is what we're talking secondary, doing right now, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 type thing, or another path, which we've talked about, Math 1, Math 2, Math 3. What does that look like? How is that being done across our state? It is being done. It just was a great first meeting. Looking forward to the second one, which we're hoping to have here soon before the break. So
will you guys, when will you report back to the board? Is it spring or?
We didn't say a date, but I'm hoping.
Springtime.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tambra, for reporting out on that. A couple important dates just to remember. Our next board meeting is January 8th. We have the budget workshop on January 19th. The special meeting with the superintendent search firm on January 22nd. And then interviews scheduled 29th, 30th, 31st, 1st, 2nd. Keep the whole week blocked. So. And if there's nothing further, the meeting is adjourned.
Yeah,